Hey everyone, it's November 19th, 2016, and you're looking at episode 69 of Percussion. With me, as always, are Megan Arns
Hello.
and Laurel Black
Hi.
and Ben Charles. How's it going?
Hi, everybody.
So, our guest today is an associate professor of percussion at the University of Illinois. He is the principal percussionist of both the Champaign-Urbana Symphony and the Sinfonia da Camera. He has performed with many renowned household names such as Louis Bellson, Terry Gibbs, and Peter Erskine, and also, Aretha Franklin and Tony Bennett. So, Ben, you're definitely winning the award for bringing your teacher to work day. So, Mr. Ricardo Flores, how's it going?
Okay, how are you? Thanks for having me.
Just fine. Thank you for joining us. And how was your PASIC?
Great. I love going to PASIC. I go every year. I've been going straight for the last 16 years, and before that, off and on. But it's a great experience. I always get revitalized there, and it's a great chance to see all my old friends, which I have friends from Texas, Florida, Ohio, Illinois, so I lived in a lot of different places.
Yeah, wonderful. Hey, Ben and Megan, what about you guys? What was your favorite event at PASIC this
My
year?
My favorite event was having dinner with you guys.
I knew someone would say that.
And lunch with Ricardo also.
Oh.
Yeah, of
But,
course.
yeah,
So it is pretty cool. So we've been doing this podcast for a whole year, and Ben and Megan have actually never met face to face until a few weeks ago at PASIC.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
probably spent like 200 hours online together or something.
But
Yeah, probably.
outside of the seeing people as far as PASIC events, I really enjoyed the NEA concert, which was cool. Two of my former teachers played on that, as well as one of Megan's for that matter. But yeah, it was really cool to see. I always enjoy seeing like all the different marimba brands up on stage together, and hearing the different perspectives. Hearing Kashka play every single time is just mind blowing, and Ji Hei Jung did a great velocities, and yeah, that was just a great concert.
Yeah, what about you, Megan?
I really enjoyed the University of Nebraska concert. The programming I thought was just fantastic, and the students did a really great job. They did this quartet. Did you guys see the concert?
Not them, no.
Which is the program on me right now, but they did a quartet by Dan Truman that was written for So Percussion, I believe, with a bunch of electronics. Dave wrote a new piece. It was a phenomenal concert. I don't know, it was just so well put together, and the programming is fantastic. And also, I really enjoyed the North Carolina A&T Cold Steel Drumline, which was one we had talked about here on the podcast in one of my segments early on. I think it was episode. It was, you know what it was? It was a Transient Canvas episode, whatever one that was.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were talking about HBCU drumlines. And in my research for that segment, I had realized that North Carolina A&T was one of the absolute best. They win the championship all the time. And so when I saw them on the grid, I was like, oh my gosh, no way, they're here. And I think it was the first time HBCU drumline had played at PASIC and presented a clinic. I mean, it was phenomenal. It was so cool to see them live.
Yeah, sure. Well,
But you-
excellent. My favorite thing had to be, so I judged the marimba finals competition for, I guess, the college category, the older folks, and everyone was just so good that it was really, really cool. Of course, we have this little quick judges conversation afterwards, and even as brief and simple as that conversation is, you learn a lot. It's cool. Nancy Zeltzman, Kevin Bobo, Brian Zader, Pius Chang, Gwen Dees. It was just, I don't know, it was really cool. And our panel discussion went really well. Had that panel discussion with Michael Burrett and Baljinder, both guests on the podcast, so that was fun. And they had a lot of great stuff to say.
Cool.
Yeah. Hey, well, Ricardo, what's on your plate these days, and what are you up to? What projects are on the table for you?
He's freaking out because he's up to quite a bit, actually.
I'm pretty busy. This time of the semester is always pretty nuts, but this particular semester I got involved in a lot of things, and we got back. PASIC. Tuesday before PASIC was our U of I percussion ensemble concert, which my colleague William Mersch conducts. But I attended that. Students did a great job. we had PASIC, Get Back. I had my steel band World Percussion concert on Tuesday of last week, and then just practiced quite a bit, getting ready for this gig. I'm over here at Tarleton State University. I'm really glad that Ben invited me, and practicing pan to play the Balginder's piece with his percussion ensemble. And I'm doing a couple other things too. I'm going to play temescal on maracas with tape, and do an Afro-Cuban thing with the students, I believe, and play some drum set with the jazz combo, because these are all things that I do. After this, I'm I'm also working on doing a concertino for percussion, timpani percussion and strings by Andrei Panufnik with my colleague William Mersch. We're doing this with the Sinfonia da Camera over in Champaign on December 1st. So next week will be rehearsals, and as long as interweaved with those rehearsals are Nutcracker rehearsals. I'm playing with the CU Symphony. In fact, we're subbing out one of the nights, the opening night from Nutcracker, with our students are playing for us because we're playing the concerto with the orchestra. And then the next week is the end of the semester. There's a Christmas concert with the CU Symphony, juries and finals, and I can't wait for the third week in December.
Yeah, to relax, yeah.
Yeah.
I was talking to Ricardo about coming down to perform and all. He's like, yeah, that all sounds great. Is there a practice room I can get in while I'm there?
I need access to some things.
So yeah, we're both keeping busy. I have my concerto tomorrow, actually, then our concert on Monday, percussion ensemble concert. So we were both up here this morning shedding some notes.
Oh yeah. I'm getting used to a foreign pan. I've never played on a different instrument. I practiced on an instrument at home, and I decided not to transport one because it's kind of hard to transport a steel drum. So I'm using one that Ben has here, which seems to be working out pretty well so far. So far.
Awesome.
What was Ben like as a student? Give us some dirt.
I don't think I can discuss that in a public forum.
I'll tell you one thing. He was definitely always right on time for everything.
Okay.
Was never running late.
Okay, if he says so. No, Ben is a very good student. It's a pleasure having. It was nice that Ben. Not all the grad students play in steel band. At our university, we don't require all the percussion majors to play in steel band. So a lot of the steel bands are made up. In fact, this semester's majority non-majors. A lot of engineering people and people from other disciplines who play percussion and really enjoy playing in steel band. But when Ben was there, he was a grad student. He played in steel band, which I was really happy about. He even arranged a piece for us.
Yeah.
So I'm glad about that. And he was a very good student. I'm glad that he's been successful, and he's now here and invited me out to Texas. I'm from Texas originally, so it's nice to be here.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Ben's been a pretty successful co-host, I have to say. His topics are always very prepared. He can't update the Google Sheet
that
to
I'm
save
not
his
great
life.
at.
Like, we have no idea what time this podcast was going to happen today until like last night. You know, yeah, way to go, Ben. Yeah.
Quite true.
Yeah, it's not quite true. It's a little exaggerated.
It's okay.
Casey likes to give me a hard time.
It's good. Somebody has to.
Well, Megan, I think you have a cool current event for us. Do you want to share that with us?
Sure. I saw on Facebook that So Percussion was doing a new collaborative project, and it caught my attention because, you know, around this time, I mean, so first of all, it was really when it was time to go to PASIC. You know, the election had just happened, right? Most of us headed to PASIC on Wednesday, and
what a crappy car ride, by the way. But yeah,
like you guys, I swear, I almost skipped Indy and just like drove to DC. I was like,
I remember you saying that.
Now PASIC is not important compared to what's going on. I gotta go to DC. What else should I do? What else can I do? And I was just, you know, I think we're all, you know, dealing with this in our own different ways and beliefs, but I have to say that being at PASIC ended up being the best thing because we are surrounded by our friends and like-minded people, and I think that was the best kind of therapy.
Yeah.
And I ended up forgetting about it quite a few times. And actually, on the ride over, I had two really great experiences. I had like two different segments of my trip. One was to St. Louis, and then one was St. Louis to Indy. And the first segment, my grad student, Anna, and I, we just had an MBR artist in town, Musakiwa Chingodza, and it was a really amazing experience for us. And we were like trying to figure out how the song that he taught us fit into several of the different parts. And, you know, after feeling just devastated after this election, I remember thinking, oh my gosh, it's so nice that we can use, I feel like I can't think about anything else, yet I was able to when I was singing and playing. And I was just, feeling so thankful that music can help take our mind off things like this and heal us in different ways. And then the same in the conversation on the next road trip, because like you're just saying, I felt like, crushed, like the car ride was going to be horrible, yet I was able to take my mind off it. And that was just foreshadowing PASIC, because then catching up with everyone and seeing everyone was really, really great. So I've noticed that this week there were two of our prominent percussion quartets, Third Coast Percussion and So Percussion, are doing shows dealing with political events and issues. And the So Percussion one is called A Gun Show. And it's on the BAM Next Wave Festival. I believe that's the Brooklyn Academy of Music Festival in Brooklyn. And I just wanted to read you this little paragraph about the show. So Percussion, Where We Live 2012 Next Wave, gives the Second Amendment a soundtrack in this affecting foray into America's fraught relationship with guns. Taking mallets to disassembled sniper rifles and assorted drums, the musicians serve as a Greek chorus, commenting instrumentally on sung and spoken texts drawn from the nightmares and nostalgia of armed experiences. Three-time Obie-winning director Ain Gordon and choreographer and performer Emily Johnson give depth to this probing work in which anger meets inalienable rights, dark memories resurface, and a contested weapon sings a bittersweet song. And that's in the BAM Harvey Theater in Brooklyn, New York. The show runs from November 30th to December 3rd. So check that out if you're in Brooklyn. And after the show, if there's a review, I'll come back and read that and can see. But I was just curious if you guys have any experience with playing music with political context, or if you're interested in it, or what that means to you, or how music, if you've ever been able to use music to grapple with a political topic.
I've listened to a lot of punk rock my whole life. That piece "Yellow After the Rain" pretty. No, sorry, I don't have anything at the top of my head.
Ricardo
No,
was
that
telling
is
me
a
a cool
good
story
question.
about "Yellow After the Rain" yesterday, which we'll come back to in a second. But University of Illinois just did a political piece you were telling me about, right?
What he's talking
The
about.
Workers Union.
A Workers Union, yes, right. That was a political piece played on the percussion ensemble concert. I don't really know much of the history of the piece. Do you?
No, but
it's political.
They performed it on election day that night.
Yeah, it was election day.
So yeah, I know that Mersh put something on Facebook about it being tied into that. I don't recall what. But yeah, there's a piece called Workers Union that could apply to what Megan's talking about.
I did look a little into who Ain Gordon, the director of this gun show, So production collaboration is, and just looking at a little interview with him, it sounds like much of what he's interested in is not so much taking a strong political stance on a topic, although I did see something they said in the show it won't be hard to tell what their political viewpoint on guns and gun violence in the U.S. is, but that's not what they're trying to make the show about. So about Ain Gordon, the director, on an interview on a YouTube channel called Vermont Performance Lab, you can see I just took some of the things he said, and he describes his work. Much of my work is about history and about how history is a kind of ruthless editing machine that leaves out the sidebars and tangents and wants to tell a certain story no matter what. I'm interested in all the things that don't get told and that are not deemed important enough to be retold, and the distance between what actually happened and the story we can tell about it. So I think it's neat. We know specific histories of important events, but his whole, I guess, motivation and interest is to add some depth and some perspective to some of those things and fill in gaps. His Wikipedia page says his work frequently deals with the interstices. Who the heck says interstices? That's really pretentious little entry there, but that means little connective parts of history focusing on people and events which are often overlooked or marginalized in official histories. This style combines elements of traditional playwriting with aspects of performance art. So just a little more about the director.
Yeah, it's just especially the stories that people tell about their histories. I heard something that, in Texas, which is where Ben and Ricardo are now, they were talking about saying that the Civil War did not begin as an argument about slavery and that it was not about slavery, which is kind of outrageous. It's like, you guys, there are documents from that time that specifically state that's what they were fighting for. Yeah, so people like to spin things however they want, but I've never done anything outrightly political with pieces, but yeah, considering the results of the election and just kind of how I felt about it, it kind of seems like maybe I should. Maybe it's about that time.
The only kind of political piece I've ever done was Christopher Dean, A Robe of Orange Flame.
Thought you'd mention that.
Yeah, which is about the Buddhist monk that self-immolated during the Vietnam War. But kind of like you guys were talking about, I didn't do it to make a political point about war or anything. And I guess if you're doing it, you probably are expressing an opinion by default, but it wasn't about that for me, so to speak. So
yeah.
Yeah, my saxophone duo partner and I commissioned a piece last year that was based on the events in Ferguson, and we didn't specifically ask for it to be about that, but the composer was from Missouri and he was trying to figure out how, he was dealing with his emotions from that event, and he's from Columbia, not Columbia, Missouri, and he related it to what was happening in his home country, and kind of globalized the issue rather than localized it by having text from the grand jury of the Ferguson trial and having people from all different nationalities with different accents read these parts and put that into an electronic track. And that, like I said, kind of globalized the issue, showing that this happens all over the world, police brutality, and not just, this wasn't an isolated event in Ferguson, obviously. So,
sure.
Example I have, but yeah, if you're in Brooklyn, go to the show. It looks awesome. I'm very curious to see how that would be live, and look forward to reading the review.
Awesome. Well, this is tangential and changing topic a bit, but since Yellow After the Rain and Texas both came up, tell us about your experience performing Yellow After the Rain at Del Mar College in Corpus Christi.
I shared this with Ben last night. I don't know how this came up.
We're talking to Kate about the concerto and her studies.
Okay, well, this is about Keiko, who I think it was her first or second tour to the United States. I was very young. I was a sophomore in college, going to Del Mar College in Corpus Christi, Texas. And on her tour to the United States, she came down to Del Mar College. She did a little tour of Texas and did a concert for us. And I thought it was great. This little bitty college, we brought in Keiko, and she was amazing. She hardly spoke any English, but she did a master class. And I was very young. I hadn't played very much keyboard at all until I got to college. It's just the way things were back then, especially where I grew up. So I played Yellow After the Rain. Yes, me. That was my first four mallet piece. And I was very young, and I played it for her. And her reaction was great. She says, "That's wonderful. She really liked the way I played it. It's beautiful. I've never heard that piece." I remember her telling me this was the first time she'd ever heard that piece.
Oh my God.
That's the first time I've ever heard that. And then she says, "You played it very, very well. Play it again." So I started playing it again. I'm really young, and she starts improvising on the other marimba. And I just totally ate it. I couldn't keep it together. But it was a good lesson. It was great. I mean, she did teach me a few things, but she liked the way I played it, and it was just kind of odd that it was the first time she had heard that piece. But and I really loved her improvising, because I've always improvised, not so much on keyboard. I improvise on Latin percussion and drums, and do a lot of jazz and things like that. But I thought it was really cool. Somebody's playing what I considered, classical music, marimba, but just improvising over it. I thought it was really nice to hear that sort of thing.
Yeah, I remember last night we were talking about in the concerto that Kate and I are performing tomorrow. There's an improvisation section, which is always an adventure. But yeah, and then any University of Illinois graduate has heard this story, but I think it's so awesome that I want everyone to hear it. So tell us about after you graduated and the sort of interesting gig that you got. Circus gig.
Oh, the circus gig. I've done a lot of things in my life, some which I won't share with you, but this I can. I got out of undergrad school in Corpus Christi, and the circus came to town, to Corpus, and the drummer quit, so they were looking for a drum set player. I was just kind of living at home with my parents, bumming off of them for a bit and playing gigs, which is what I did. I had a bachelor's in performance, but didn't have anything to do with it. And the circus came to town. They called the university because they needed a sub, and my teacher didn't want to do it, so he gave him my name. They asked me, can you be at the Coliseum, in 30 minutes with your drum set? Sure. And I did, and I played a rehearsal, and I did a show, and I went on the road with the circus. After I played, they liked what I did, so they said, do you want to go on the road? Okay. I'm not doing anything else, so I went on the road with, this was not a big circus. It wasn't like Ringling Brothers. It was, it's called Cardin International, and what they do is they did a lot of shrine dates. So when you think of the Shrine Circus, a lot of people think, have you ever heard of the Shrine Circus? The Shriners are a group that raise money for children's hospitals. They have shrine hospitals all over the country, and they do very good things, the Shriners in different communities. And when I was younger, especially, there was always Shrine Circus that came to town, and I thought it was just a Shrine Circus that toured, but actually the Shriners contract a producer to bring in his circus, and they call it the Shrine Circus. So we did a lot of shrine dates, but it was Cardin International, and we did went through Texas up through Midwest, and he was based in Missouri, actually. Joplin, Missouri, I think, is where they were based. Okay. And went through the Midwest, and we played through Illinois, I remember. But it was just organ and drums. We went all the way up to Canada. And, of course, that's when I quit, is when I was in Ontario. Bad time to quit, but we had kind of things that happened. It was quite a life. I learned a lot. I was 22 at the time.
Yeah.
But I was on the road with the circus and getting paid cash and meeting all these people from all over the world. It was pretty awesome, The Chimp Act was from Czechoslovakia. The Bears were from Russia. The Tigers, the Cat Act was from England. Kay Rosaire was her name. Actually, I saw her in some television show. She lives in Florida now. Huh. A lot of circus people would winter in Florida for the animals, The producer owned his own elephants and his own concessions. That's where he made his money. What else? There was a horse act from France, the Flying Act. There was one from Chile. There was another one from the United States called the Flying Eagles, of course.
So you didn't get to keep any of the animals, though?
I did not keep any of the animals. I did touch a couple of them. It was fun. It's quite an experience. So I did a circus gig for a bit. Then I went to grad school in Akron, and then I did a cruise ship gig for a little bit too. So my experience is more jazz based. A lot of drum set stuff. I did playing drum set since I was like 13. But I also play in orchestras and do all that other stuff too.
Yeah. So I've been to the circus once, and I was I forget exactly how old I was. It was a great circus. I was maybe 10, and it ended when a guy fell off the tightrope.
Oh, no.
Yeah, I can still, see it. It was pretty gnarly.
So on a different note,
I've seen a guy fall off a tightrope. I wish they would just use nets below.
Was he not using a net?
No nets. They use nets. The trapeze guys use nets, but there was no net. And I thought that was kind of the point. It's not going to be scary if it's safe.
That's true.
But I don't care.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can still see it very vividly.
That's one of the acts that I remember very well is the high wire act, because on my show, the Walendas, I don't know if you ever heard of the Flying Walendas. They're like a famous tightrope family. Most of these acts are families. They're families that travel around. They've got their kids with them, and they learn the trade and end up doing it later when they grow up. The Flying Walendas are very famous. The father broke some record with going over a high wire over some cliff or something in Mexico. I forgot what it was, but they're pretty famous. And his son Tino was on the show with us, and he did the high wire. He never fell. and he also worked without a net as well. But I remember, yeah, that was pretty intense, him working without a net, but he'd never, ever fall because, I mean, the wire is kind of part of your body. If you slip, you catch yourself with your elbow, and you get this huge bruise on your body, but you don't fall. And
Right.
my snare drum roll got really good from playing that show because he had this part of the act when he was walking down the middle, and then we'd stop the music, and I'd get the cue, take it way down, hold this roll, and the guy at the his assistant down the floor would throw a chair up to him, and he'd catch it, rim shot. He'd put the chair on the wire, rim shot. Put his foot on the chair, rim shot. Other foot on the chair, rim shot. And then he would lift his feet up, and he did a handstand, one hand on a chair on the wire. And then reach the top, spread his hand out, ba-dam, B flat chord.
So I forgot to tell you, you're going to do that on Monday in the concert.
You're doing the...
We're cutting Balginder's piece. I'll do the roll.
You do the roll.
You get on the high wire.
No, I'm going to do the roll. You do the high wire.
We'll work it out.
You can do that. But,
Were you ever scared to put the rim shot in the wrong place or something? Or...
Oh, yeah, I was just totally frightened.
Oh, man, it confuses the guy. And
Yeah.
My roommate in grad school, his family, like I think they've transferred into like owning games or something that travel with the circus, but his grandfather was one of the most famous unicyclists, and I think one of the first, I may not get this right, but like one of the first, I think he's Mexican to be like highlighted on American television was his grandfather, and his grandmother rode elephants, and I went to their house, and there's just all these black and white photos of the grandpa on the ground on a unicycle, and then grandma standing on top of an elephant in this really gorgeous costume. And
cool life, yeah.
There was a you could minor, I think it was minor in circus at Florida State.
Like a degree minor.
Wow. Yeah, you could minor in circus. It was crazy. I went to the circus there. It was incredible. I mean, it was like lots of people from that program go on to, perform in circus shows. Wow. I think that's the only place in the country where you can get a degree like that.
Probably so.
Yeah. At an academic institution.
Yeah.
So when Tino would mess up, which he did a couple of times on the act, I had this roll going, and it had already been going for 2 or 3 minutes with the rim shots and everything, and then he slipped once or twice, but he caught himself. So I kind of stopped because I didn't know what to do, and then the music director said, no, keep rolling. Okay, bring it way down. And I had to keep rolling until he got back up there and did the whole thing again. So I'd probably been rolling for about 5 or 6 minutes. Non-stop. Yeah.
Wow.
Practice.
You learn endurance on a gig like that.
The guy I saw fall caught himself once, and he connected his hands and feet together on the wire and spun to recover, and then he did it again, I think twice more for the audience, and then he stood up out of it and fell. And his partner was right next to him. So there was another guy like right there with him, out of reach, but I can't imagine being the other guy, and yeah.
I can't either.
Then there are those people who do this over buildings, right? Have you seen that? There are people who or who scale skyscrapers and different buildings. There's a movie or a documentary on Netflix about that.
Man on Wire, I think.
What's it called?
I think it's called Man on Wire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrifying. Oof.
Yeah, maybe that's why I'm so messed up in the head. Yeah.
Well, we've all seen The Office when Dwight tries to do it with the print attached to the bottom of his bike.
That was a little unrealistic, I think.
That was a little unrealistic.
Yeah. Well, okay, so speaking of doing amazing things, you found something this week, Laurel, about motivation. And it seems like it's something we encounter a lot with ourselves and with students, and it's just it's a pretty mysterious issue. So yeah, what did you find, Laurel?
Yeah, well, I got to this has been on my mind just because it's we're all teachers, and it's that point in the semester when students are so overwhelmed, and we are too. And then, they'll come to you and they say, I just can't find the motivation to do anything. It's like, okay, well, I understand that. And so we get kind of in this weird place where you think, wait, am I supposed to motivate my students? I think motivation is a very internal issue, not an external issue. And so I just started hunting around for other thoughts on this topic. And I found something that I thought was really useful. And I know, fresh from PASIC, now we all might be kind of tired, but we're not unmotivated. And PASIC is one of those really energizing events, but of course that always wears off, and then we're left with our normal selves in our normal climate, and like, where do we go from there? So I found a blog called mindfulnessovermatter.com is the address, and it's written by a woman named Maureen, and I can't find out too much about her. She's a digital marketer, and then she just calls herself a mindfulness advocate, and I think she just writes a lot about it, and my guess is probably gives talks wherever she lives. But she had a little essay about self-motivation that I found useful, so I just want to read little bits and pieces and talk about it. So here's what she says. You can try all the self-motivation tips in the world, but they're only a stopgap solution unless you do two things. Understand the possible reasons for your lack of motivation and let go of your attachment to results. Lack of motivation often sets in when we don't feel confident in our ability to do what needs to be done, don't see the tasks before us as important, or don't view the payoff for getting things done as meaningful, like i.e. the incentive to act just isn't worth it. Nothing is worth it. And she says, what do all of those possible causes have in common? Each of them is based on a perceived outcome which hasn't yet happened and our judgment of that outcome. And I think that at the lack of motivation must be self-doubt. Like, you're not good enough. You won't win. You don't belong here, perhaps, with this group of people. I think we assume these things about ourselves as self-doubt creeps in. And then that puts us into this feedback loop of negative emotions and thoughts in our brain, because our brains love to find shortcuts. We constantly tell them, like, you're terrible, you're awful, you're not going to amount to anything. It starts to shortcut to believe that more and more quickly. Conversely, if you always say, like, no, it's great, things are fine, it's fantastic, it's going to be awesome, you start to actually think that because your brain is creating this positive feedback loop. And of course, what we want is a balance. We want reality. And motivation, in terms of how I think of it, it's a very internal struggle, and it's not something anybody else can bestow upon you. And in that way, I think this concept of self-motivation is kind of redundant. And it's just motivation, period. And at that point, there's not a great teacher or external goal that can help you. Because if it is this internal struggle, then I think it's a self-care issue in trying to recover a joy about life, and then more specifically about whatever the topic is that you're trying to find motivation for. So maybe you don't have motivation to practice, but you do have it to read. Maybe you just want to read today. Well, okay, just read something about creativity or artistry, or even playing if you can, but sometimes that feels too closely related to practice if that's the thing you can't get motivated to do. Or maybe you have the energy to go on a hike or go for a run, but you don't want to go practice for 5 hours. Okay, well, go for a hike, go for a run. Like, that will make you a better musician in the long run, because you'll be a healthier human, and I think more importantly, like, when these things hit us, if we have motivation to do something other than what we should do, quote unquote, and I've said here before that I think the word should is such a dangerous word. It is such a bad word in our language, that we don't we don't judge what we view as misplaced motivation, because it will be good for us somehow. And then to move on to the second thing that Maureen mentions, which is the attachment to our outcomes of these things that we quote unquote should be doing. I think attachment to outcomes like that is a motivation killer. And it seems at first like those would help. Like, for example, if you're a person who, like, maybe you want to lose weight or you want to get healthy and you think, oh, I have my 15-year high school reunion coming up. I'll use that and I'll have these goals and this date in mind and that will help me do it. Okay, it might. But then you get there and what if nobody reacts to you the way you want? And then once that event is over, you've lost the motivation to keep a healthy lifestyle and it all comes back. All the weight comes back. And that happens, to everybody. There's countless like articles about that everywhere in all kinds of realms. And mindfulness, which is what Maureen talks about and something that is very dear to me, what it teaches in reference to finding motivation is that it isn't the ending we seek, but it's instead to observe each moment just kind of as the passing cloud that it is. And that as these moments of self-doubt may arrive, sure, they're there for a little bit, but then 2 hours later, they've moved on, just like clouds in the weather, and they're gone. And we can experience each new moment freshly. An Alexander technique that's called end gaining, where you're so worried about the result, about performing this particular excerpt, or about something like, oh, I have to change the spark plug in my car. You're so worried about the action that you don't notice that you're trying to do it with all this extra tension. And so, and you end up hurting yourself actually, instead of, doing something that is helpful that you need for your life. And in our field, I think of end gaining analogously as only doing activities because they look good for tenure, because you need them for tenure. That's an end gaining thing for me. Or only trying to write pieces because you think that will make you famous and give you a career. Like, that's more worried about an outcome than about a process. Like, writing pieces because you love to compose is great. And that's a super mindful activity. But writing because you think then you'll be famous, that's a little too attached to a result that you can't control and is incredibly external for you.
Sorry, it's just so applicable, but scientists call that play. Play is the best motivator. So they talk about distraction effect, optimization, mental contrasting, something called what the hell effect. I'll get to all this, and something called play. So if you're feeling good about what you're doing is the best motivator, they say. So if your science studies show that if you have a gym membership because you're trying to lose weight, you won't do as well as the person who has a gym membership because they want to feel good. That's a very different type of thing. Feeling good is a type of play, whereas weight loss is a type of like end goal. Like you said, write pieces because I want to be famous. Be on the committee at PAS because I want to get tenure. No, be on the committee because you want to be on the committee is obviously going to be a much more effective way to do that activity. So the research shows that, yeah, you're exactly right, and they call it play.
Yeah.
Sorry, it was just so.
Yeah, I think that's just.
You're so spot on.
It's probably just the same thing. It's like, those of us who are like touchy-feely abstract types call it mindfulness, and then scientists just call it something else. Yeah. Because they can't use touchy-feely because they're scientists.
You can't say that. Yeah.
Yeah, they can't say that. Yeah. So anyway, I found this topic to be really interesting, and to close, and we can keep discussing, of course, Maureen ends this little essay on her blog with just the following small statements. You don't have to be motivated to take action. You do have to make a conscious decision to act. How you feel about that is irrelevant. The action you take can be large or small. It may or may not build your confidence, shift a paradigm, or reward you the way you'd like it to, and how you feel about that is also irrelevant. Taking action moves you forward. Waiting for motivation keeps you stuck. What you do with this information, you do in this moment, and the decision is always up to you.
I would like to ask Ricardo, how did you motivate Ben, and how should I motivate Ben to update the Google Sheet?
Usually the beatings were pretty severe.
I thought I just threatened him on a daily basis.
Right.
Physical violence.
I would like to know though. I mean, you're here with some younger teachers. What advice do you have for us as far as motivating students?
Wow.
Mhm.
I feel like the old guy. I am the old guy. Okay, that's all right. That's a difficult subject. Motivating students. Some of them are very much self-motivating, and of course others are not. I myself need to be motivated too. What I usually do with students is I'll share stories about myself and the way that I feel about being motivated. And usually, I think if you're personal with students and you tell them the way that you feel about things and how you relate and how you deal with it, that really, really works. It helps them quite a bit. If you say, well, you should do this because I've read this somewhere. But if you just tell them, from my experience, I like to tell students, just think about, especially, now this is different. I'm talking about students have problems with just performance anxiety. But I think being motivated to wanting to get out there and play a marimba solo in front of the studio class, in front of their peers, they get so nervous and they can't get, they're not practicing enough, that they're not getting motivated. I try to remind them of why they're doing this in the first place. Why are you in school? Why are you taking lessons? Why are you studying music? Because it's fun. I like music. I love percussion. I love playing this stuff. And if just reminding them of that, I think gets them motivated. Just reminding them of why exactly did you get into this because you wanted to get really nervous in front of people, or because you wanted to practice 5 hours a day? Well, not really, but you do want to get better, and that's why you got into this, because you want to get better and you love doing this. And just reminding them of that, that's what helps me, especially. It's to get motivated. It's like, wow, I like practicing. It's hard to get started, but once I'm in there, like, all of a sudden an hour or 2 hours have gone by, and I'm still working in the same piece. So just personal.
I've had
personal stuff. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, like, to some extent, I reject the premise of your question. Like, how do you motivate someone else? I don't know if you can. Frankly, I think you can offer something that might inspire them to be motivated.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Something that I did, my experience. But like you said, you can't really motivate them, but you can share with them how you motivated yourself, maybe.
Well, and I think there's so many things going on in my head right now. But one thing for me was, like, inspiration and motivation are very closely related, I think. And for me, it was always inspiring to have a guest artist or, see a great performance, which is like why I bring someone like Ricardo here. Because that, for me, like, I remember the week after I saw Eric Samu play my freshman year, it was like, all right, got to go practice.
You come off that feeling and you're on fire for a straight 2 weeks, and
and I remember last year when I had Michael D'Angelo at FAU, like, the next day after he left, it was like everyone had out stick control. It was great.
I think that's the tricky thing as a teacher is finding, or as a college professor, like running a program, is finding that balance of, like, how many guests do you bring in? How do you kind of externally motivate your students with, and make sure that you're hitting people in different ways, whether that's providing performance opportunities or bringing in a guest or just having a little bit more time and not overloading them. That has been a huge challenge for me.
But, like, it was funny, like, Laurel's sitting here talking, I'm sitting next to Ricardo, and I was having flashbacks to my days in Illinois, because there's just so many things. And so I had a roommate when I was in Illinois who was also a percussionist named Andy Miller. You know Andy. Andy's a wonderful, wonderful performer, great guy.
I know Andy Miller.
Yeah, I think he picked you up from the
crazy
airport
dreadlocks.
Yeah, actually, he cut his dreads off. I saw him at PASIC. It's weird.
I know, right? Okay, but same guy, right?
But
nice
so
guy.
Andy and I feel like we were like Simon and Garfunkel, like, musically respected each other a whole lot, but just argued constantly also. About air conditioning also in our apartment we shared, but I'll get to that in a minute. But Andy is...
Yeah, we got to get to that.
Yeah, no, it's relevant, I promise. But Andy is he's the
Gotta
only
have that.
person I've ever met that legitimately just enjoys practicing and learning new pieces and would be totally content to learn a dozen new pieces and never perform any of them. And I would always watch him practicing, like these hard pieces with no intention of performing them and like seriously practicing and getting very good at them. And I was always like, man, I wish I could be like that. Like I wish I liked practicing that much. And so I kind of realized after a while, like, and I don't want to say this out loud, but I really don't enjoy practicing. I wish I could just be good at things and just put on concerts. Now, I enjoy the concerts so much that I realize it's like, eating your broccoli, like I have to practice. So I do practice because of that. But man, if I could practice like Andy, I'd be on fire. um, but no, and then the other kind of side of my brain was going to, I remember I read a thing that Rob Knopper wrote a while back about kind of like getting, how to get yourself into the practice room. And he talks about like every second you spend trying to practice but not practicing is wasted. For example, this like the second you spend taking your sticks out of your mallet bag or getting your metronome out, plugging it in, turning it on, all that is just wasted opportunity to practice. So I don't remember all the ins and outs of what he wrote, but basically in so many words, you're trying to enable yourself to practice. So like, set yourself up in the, with the least resistance to get from you to practicing. And if you have a great, situation at home where you have a marimba set up, you can leave your mallets on the stand, metronome plugged in, like, all the better. But the air conditioning thing I was getting to, my middle summer in my master's degree, the summer in the middle, I couldn't find a job. I was bummed out about that, and I just kind of said, okay, I'm going to practice. But I had these things that got in the way. For one thing, I hated taking the bus. I always wanted to drive to school. But parking, I wasn't going to buy a parking permit for the summer, and I didn't want to park at meters. And Andy and I would always argue about the air conditioning. He didn't want to use it because it saved money, and I wanted to use it because it was comfortable. And I'm not really a morning person, and there was just several factors that ended up my middle summer. I completely flipped my sleep schedule. I practiced all night long, and I would come home at like 8 a.m. and sleep during the day when Andy was out and I could use the air conditioning. And because I was there at night, I didn't have to pay the parking meters, so parking was free. So I just like completely defeated any resistance that summer to practicing, and that's how I learned con variations. And rainbows. Yeah. So that was a great summer where like it was funny, like I didn't even think about like all these little factors that I ended up just knocking out by just flipping my sleep schedule for one summer. So yeah, I told you the air conditioning thing was relevant.
In Boston, one of the bad snowstorms that we inevitably had when I was studying there, I was trekking and I was putting the first sets of prints into the sidewalk, and I think there was a little over a foot of snow, and I took a picture. It was clearly like, this is where I'm going. And I sent it to my parents and I was like, don't tell me I'm not motivated. Like, I am literally the only person walking to the practice room right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wish we would draw clearer lines between, I mean, as I was reading a little more about this, I feel like certain terms kind of get blended, like motivation, inspired, and incentivized. I think those are different things. If you're promising a student a grade, you're incentivizing them to practice, or if you're threatening a bad grade, you're incentivizing. And if you Google, like the science of motivation or something, so much of the top results have to do with how to motivate your employees, how to get people to work harder, and it just feels a little different than what we're trying to do.
Yeah, I wish we didn't have grades for music. I mean, we need to. It's academia, all that sort of thing, but it just feels so stupid. Like, what is a lesson or a B lesson? It's like you should just, be putting in your, authentic effort to do the best you can every single week or whatever. Right. And sometimes you have an off week. That doesn't mean you had a failure of a lesson because you got busy and, I don't know.
Well, and it's interesting because the first 20 years of our lives we're just in school. Like, that's what we know. The things that give us feedback are our grades more than anything else. Grades and hoping your parents aren't mad at you. is basically your two sources of feedback for like the first 17 years of life. And I experienced this a little in the class that I'm teaching. I had to just lay into them because it felt like they're not working. And I'm not the type of teacher to yell and kick and scream. It's just like, you don't do the work, that's fine. And I'm not threatening grades over you, but don't be surprised when you guys have D's and C's, because that's the work you're doing. And then suddenly, like, I just say that, and then they're concerned. Yeah. And they're like, wait, now what do I do? Like, how do I fix that? And it's like, you should have been concerned that you just weren't caring.
Well, that's what's always been weird to me. Either you care or you don't. It was never the grades, and there were plenty of classes that I just genuinely wasn't interested in, and I knew I was doing bad in, and that was okay with me.
I remember in one of the I read 2 Steve Jobs bios, and in one of them it talked about Steve Jobs would have done the exact same thing if it didn't make him rich, basically. Like, of course, I'm sure he enjoyed having the money, but he would have gone about business the exact same way, whether it was profitable or not, really.
Yeah, well, I think that's back to this concept of play and what Laurel, I forgot what you called it, but it was the same thing. You don't compose because you want to be famous, you compose because you want to compose, and that's it. And then this other stuff happens to come along with it. Yeah, and if you happen to find
actually much
you're
in the
along
same
the way,
vein,
lucky you.
Maybe you can speak to this, like improvisation. A lot of people improvise because, for a job I need to be able to know how to improvise, which I'll be the first person to admit that's sort of how I went about it a lot, and it doesn't work at all.
That's so totally the opposite. Of what it's about.
Yeah, and you had that. You said it when you were in high school. You improvised. That's just what you did, and you thought it was normal.
I thought it was normal. I thought everybody improvised. Now, to this day, I'm not that strong a sight reader because I grew up in a school system where, in Texas, where we learned a lot of things by rote. We just learned all these pieces to play for contests and get first division ratings and all that. And didn't sight read all that much, but some of the things that I remember in middle school, I was going to read this snare drum part for this piece, but instead this 8th grader who was older than me told me it goes like this, and just kind of showed it to me what the groove was like. So I played it, and we did, and then after school we just get together and play drums and jam for a bit, and we did that a lot in high school. We just get together and play percussion and jam. I had some influences in my life that were really weird. There was this guy from San Antonio. He lives in San Antonio now, but he and his wife, she was a dancer, he was a composer, percussionist, came and did a residency at my school in Robstown, Texas for a couple of years. They got some grant from the state of Texas to do a residency on the arts, and he taught composition and percussion music for like K through high school, and she taught dance, and they did performances, and he taught us to improvise. I remember he brought in brake drums. First time I'd ever seen brake drums used as percussion instruments. This was in the 70s. It was pretty cutting edge for him. He actually sat us all down and played John Cage and Lou Harrison recordings for us. And my friends thought that he was nuts because they'd never heard anything like that. But he also just got us to play these brake drums and play grooves and just improvise. And we would jam. It would just be a normal thing of improvising and making things up. And like you said, it's play. It's fun. So practicing that wasn't like practicing. It was just having fun, having a jam session, so to speak.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's a different thing.
Yeah, and I try to get students to get back to that point where music used to be fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, because practicing, I think you do it for a while, it just kind of wears on you, and it doesn't mean you don't like music, it means you don't like practicing.
Well, it's supposed to be fun. I tell my steel band members, if you don't have fun, you get an F. While you're playing, you have to have fun while you're playing this music, or any music actually. If not, you should fail, because it's supposed to be fun. That's why we do it, you know?
Can I just say something about having fun real quick? Hold on one second.
Absolutely not.
Do you remember the Bill Kahn episode where I talked about playing xylophonia on my master's recital?
Yeah, yeah.
And I did the duck call solo, and we had a giant costume duck come out. Kate and I tomorrow are doing xylophonia as an encore. Play the duck call. With the got my duck call right here. A little.
So you just keep that thing with you when you move?
No, this is actually the Tarleton's. This is the university's. So John Tarleton, who the university's named after, had a pet duck, named Oscar P. So they have this duck costume on campus that I was able to borrow. I felt
You
a
just-
little weird carrying a decapitated duck head and a little ball of fur across campus, but
Can you try it on for us?
Yes.
yeah, so this is what it looks like. I wish I had this for the Halloween episode, man.
Yeah, that would be perfect.
Yeah.
Can
Now
you
we're
play the
talking.
duck call with it
Yeah,
on?
it's pretty epic. And the best part about the costume is he wears overalls, and there's actually a cutout in the back of the overalls for his tail to hang out of. It's really cute.
Good.
So
Sounds
yeah,
good.
Oscar P, man.
Well, let me just let me finish up this little bit on motivation and just what I found. This thing called the distraction effect is when you have a high reward incentive, which they do an experiment where they have a big cash reward for doing a very menial, easy, simple task, and people do really well with that. But when the task is complex, the high reward will actually slow the people down. So you'll take more time working on the complex task. Basically, as the task gets more difficult and more trying, the reward becomes something that is distraction, and they call that the distraction effect. Optimization is something that when you think optimistically too much and you think about, oh, how great you focus too much on the outcome and how wonderful this performance is going to be, you can end up tricking your brain into thinking everything is going really well, and it'll actually be counterproductive. So they did a test with smokers, people trying to quit smoking, and they found that people who optimized too much had it was counterproductive to them quitting smoking. But they said what you should do instead is do something called mental contrasting, which is imagine the goal and that good result, but along with that is all the obstacles you'll conquer along the way, and you'll foresee the obstacles that will inevitably get in the way. So I think for a musician, that might be getting in that practice rut, and when you get in the room, you're having fun, you're motivated, but within the first little while, for some people that might be a very short while, it's not fun anymore because you try something and you fail, and you have to expect that and kind of plan your way through it. And let's see, then there's something called the what the hell effect, which is you've already failed this much, so you might as well give up. And the thing I saw was a weight loss study, and they offered people medium, small, and large milkshakes and said you have to take one, and then you are going to be offered some ice cream after that. And the people who took the large milkshake were inclined to take more ice cream after the fact, whereas the people who took the small milkshake would eat less ice cream. And I guess they correlate that to this what the hell effect. Oh, you already went this far, you're already not doing it, you might as well just let loose. So I think of a student, it's like, man, I'm a senior in my degree, I can't do this and I can't do that, and what the hell, I'm kind of done. And then, of course, we already talked about play. Feeling good about what you're doing is a much better motivator than doing it because you are supposed to or anything like that. So anyway, that's what I found. Yeah.
Cool. Where's that information from? Like, what if we want to learn more about that?
Oh, geez. I poked around Google enough, and I watched a little YouTube video that linked me to a bunch of that, and I found out, man, there's a lot more. Like, there's a lot of studies on this, and there's a lot of research on this, and it sounds like it's pretty complex. And like we said, with the first thing you find when you look up motivation is a lot of like how to motivate your employees, how to make your business more productive. Yeah. So yeah, obviously there's a lot of dollars involved in this type of research, and big incentives to get to the bottom of this. So anyway, I thought some of it was related a lot to what we're doing, but I feel like ours is a little different, because a lot of the language they're using is a very much New Year's resolution type of conversation, whereas practicing, I think it's much more like
this lifelong pursuit.
Yeah, it's this lifelong permanent thing for yourself with not such a quick, short, final goal. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. It's complicated, and it's also interesting.
Yeah. Well, and it can be important to have. I know we're trying to wrap up because everybody's running out of time, but a lot of people you meet that have, they're musicians or writers or something creative as their profession, which is such a long-term thing. They tend to have some hobby that is short-term. Like, I like to sew and make clothes because you put work in and then it's done and your product is there and you did the work and you always have the proof.
Start
and I
to
have
finish.
Yeah, and I have a teacher that like was into woodworking, and some people like video games, and because when you're done, you're done. When you won, you won. And so I think, perhaps a balance of something in life that is long term and then something that is short term reward maybe helps with this type of self motivation. Yeah, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Totally makes sense.
I like cooking. I think that's
Cooking.
short-term. Yeah, cooking, that's fun.
Yeah.
Very rewarding also.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, well, awesome. You guys, thanks so much. Ricardo, Flores, thanks so much for joining us. It's great to meet you, and I wish we could have hung out a little more at PASIC. Sorry we just met so quick, but this was fun. Nice to get to know you.
Nice. And it was nice meeting all of you. Thanks. And I wish we could have hung out more too. This was fun.
Cool.
Looking forward to our concert.
Yeah, you guys have fun, have a blast, and best of luck on your concert. And yeah, way to go, Ben. Nice catch.
I should have sprung on Ricardo. I should have told him he had to wear the duck costume tomorrow, but
Yeah, like so it's a really weird podcast. We're all going to be wearing duck costumes.
Perfect.
Awesome. Okay, guys. Hey, well, thanks a lot.
thanks so much.
Bye.
See you guys.